Nova took a sharp breath, her frustration falling away to vulnerability. You think I can't handle it? All I've ever wanted is to be by your side, Kaden, to help you bear whatever burdens you carry. She stepped forward, and the space between them felt charged, as though the air crackled with unspoken words and promises yet to be made. With a determined flick of her hair, she moved closer, her presence overwhelming him, stirring something deep inside. He could see this woman, the one who had bravely stolen her sister's identity, who grappled with her twin's expectations, and beneath it all, the fierce desire to be more, to live passionately amidst the chaos. It was intoxicating. Let me be a part of that decision, she implored, her voice barely above a whisper, though it echoed loudly in his heart. Whatever this is between us, it's real. Don't doubt that. And with those words, the storm outside gave a violent growl, as if mirroring their emotions. Kaden reached out, his fingers brushing against her cheek, a touch reverberating with heat, igniting the space around them. Nova's breath hitched, her eyes wide with anticipation, searching his fiercely. He leaned closer, their foreheads nearly touching, the world fading around them. A thunderclap punctuated the silence, the sound enveloping them in a shroud of intimacy, as though the universe conspired to bring them together in this very moment. Then, Kaden kissed her softly at first, a tentative exploration that soon deepened as the storm roared on, the rain a wild chorus against the windows. Their mouths moved in harmony, a rhythm both new and reverberant with history, and he could feel the warmth of her body absorbing his anxieties and fears. Every taste, every warm sigh carried the weight of unuttered confessions and the promise of what lay ahead. For a fleeting moment, there were no burdens, no secrets, just the vastness of possibility sealed between them, until the door burst open, shattering their embrace and the delicious tension hang suspended in the air. Have you both lost your minds? Marcus, Caden's best friend, all but shouted, soaked from the rain that dripped from his clothes, his face bearing the stark lines of worry. Kaden stepped back, heart still racing. In the wake of the unexpected interruption, he glanced at Nova, whose cheeks flushed a delightful pink. I think the storm got to us, he said, a teasing smirk creeping onto his lips, even as uncertainty gnawed at him. More like the secret you're hiding is about to hit the fan. Marcus shot back, catching his breath, oblivious to the newly budding intimacy. Nova snorted, laughter bubbling up as the storm continued its cacophony outside, and while Caden's heart raced, the fight ahead felt less daunting when her smile sparkled back at him. Just wait till I tell you what I've overheard, Marcus added, the storm's thunder drowning out the weight of his words as they lingered in the air. Caden's resolve twisted, knowing that choices he made now would ripple out into their lives. But in that space, he felt an unyielding tether anchoring him to Nova. Scene 75. Full circle. The grand chandelier above the ballroom sparkled like a constellation trapped beneath a polished glass dome, casting a warm glow over the gathered elite. Kaden Onyx stood at the edge of the scene, a glass of champagne cradled in his palm, the effervescence dancing against the rim. The plush carpet absorbed the rush of feet, laughter mingling with the clinks of crystal as the gala swelled with magnificence. Yet a thin veil of tension hung over him, palpable and unyielding. Across the room, Nova Leclair moved like a whisper of air, smartly clad in a deep emerald gown that swayed with her every step, drawing attention without seeking it. Her twin, Esme, had planned this evening down to the smallest detail, but it was Nova who bore the weight of its underlying treachery. Just moments ago, she had casually reached for the canapés, her hand brushing against the textured fabric of the tablecloth. But now, every gesture seemed to scream of the truth she was desperate to conceal. Kaden caught her eye, their gazes clashing in a silent duel. His brow furrowed with concern. He'd seen that light, that reckless determination within her before, and it ignited something deep inside him. He leaned slightly against the wall, his posture a mask of calm, but inwardly he clenched his jaw. Often it hurt to see her exuberance when they were teetering on the brink of uncertainty. Isn't it magnificent? Esme exclaimed beside them, oblivious to the storm swirling in the air. She tossed her hair back, an effortless gesture, gleeful in the glow of lavish admiration. Only the best for my guests. Kaden, you must taste the tartlets. Kaden offered a stiff nod, yet his focus remained on Nova. She sighed delicately, tension rippling through her body, as if she could sense the tempest brewing just beneath her skin. "You know, if we keep up this charade, someone will find out," Kaden murmured, just loud enough for her to hear, punctuating the optimism with an undercurrent of fear. The warmth of the gathering seemed to fade, and the aroma of vanilla and citrus hung heavily in the air, but for them, it was overshadowed by an eeriness that bound them tighter than any adhesive ever could. "Let them," she replied, her voice low, challenging. The curve of her mouth suggested a smirk, yet her eyes betrayed her. "Always a few secrets in the mix, right? How's that saying go? More fun that way?" He took a step closer, the space between them shrinking. His voice softened, a gravelly murmur. "Nova, this isn't fun if anyone else discovers." "Discover what?" She cut him off, a flicker of defiance sparking in her posture. Her arms folded protectively over her stomach, fingers gripping her cavalier attitude like a lifeboat. "That I'm not Esme, or maybe that we're running from something together?" Their confrontation drew the attention of a few onlookers, yet Kaden barely noticed. He was entranced by her resolve, that fierce fire in her eyes, a manifestation of the very spirit he admired. "Anyone can play pretend, but this is more than just a game," he replied, his tone steady yet firm. Just then, the atmosphere shifted, thickening with the arrival of a figure cloaked in shadows. A man walked into the light, compelling and dark, bearing a smirk that sent ripples of unease through the crowd. Kaden instinctively bristled as he recognized him, Damien, the architect of the underbelly they'd hoped to escape. "Look who decided to join the party." "Kaden, I wasn't aware you brought your captivating counterpart," Damien crooned, eyeing Nova like she was a prize on display. "How charming that you'd take such risks. Ball gowns can be so revealing." Nova stepped back, instinctively drawing Kaden closer, her breath hitching in her throat. The stakes had shifted. Now, emotions battled while danger encroached. Kaden's protective instinct surged to the forefront, a silent promise echoing between them. "Stay close," he whispered into her ear, his breath hot against her skin, igniting a spark between them, bold yet unspoken. "Always," she whispered back, her eyes locked with his, an unbreakable thread binding them. And there they stood, two warriors against a tempest, ready to fight for a truth much larger than themselves. In that charged moment, their tumultuous past led them to an uncertain but fierce future filled with unspoken desires and declarations of love. Scene 76. Climactic secrets. The grand ballroom thrummed with the pulse of subdued luxury, shadows dancing across the gold-embellished walls. A haze of laughter and clinking glasses surrounded Kaden Onyx, but within him, silence brooded. In the midst of white linen and glimmering chandeliers, his heart raced, not from the thrill of the gala, but from the weight of secrets pressing down on his chest. He watched as familiar faces mingled, posing for snapshots that hid countless fractures beneath their polished exteriors. Across the room, Nova Leclair embodied a duality. She wore a striking emerald gown that hugged her figure while exuding an air of confidence, even as complexities churned within her. Each movement radiated a blend of grace and tension. Kaden's gaze locked onto her, igniting a flurry of emotions. Here stood the woman who stepped into her sister's life, yet had somehow wrapped herself intimately around his very soul, rivaling the chaos swirling around them. "Isn't this just charming?" Nova said with a mirthful lilt that cut through Kaden's thoughts as she approached, a slight tremor in her step. She feigned a smile, but her eyes betrayed her uncertainty. "It's a facade," he replied, his voice low and rich, laden with what lingered unspoken between them. "Everyone here is playing a part, except you and me." Her playful tone rang hollow, as if she sensed the truth lurking within the darkness cloaking their gathering. "Perhaps." Kaden stepped closer, invading her personal space with deliberate intent, the soft fragrance of jasmine clinging to her hair enveloping him in warmth. "But that doesn't stop us from being swept into the currents of their secrets." As silence enveloped them, a sudden commotion erupted at the other end of the room. A glass shattered, followed by a shocked gasp which pulled their rapt attention like a moth to a flame. The ambiance shifted, fraught with tension, as whispers spread faster than wildfire. Nova frowned, drawing her gaze back to Kaden, searching for assurance amidst rising fear. "How many secrets do you carry, Kaden?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper, her penetrating gaze locking onto his. He hesitated, knowing what lay behind that question loomed larger than any ballroom scandal. "And what about you? What truths do you hold?" The dance between them had always been delicate, playful, but now their steps inched toward the edge, a cliff of revelations. "I am this close to unraveling," she murmured, bridging the physical distance as she leaned in, their breaths mingling. "I need to know you. Then you should step closer to the truth." His voice dropped, a resonant whisper meant only for her ears, the connection igniting something combustible between them. There, under the watchful glow of crystal chandeliers, urgency pressed itself against their hearts. Kaden brushed her cheek, an intimate gesture in stark contrast to the chaotic world that surrounded them. "Let's escape this farce," he breathed, captivated yet torn. In that moment, passion ignited, a fire stoked with the promise of what remained unsaid. Stepping back slightly, Nova examined his expression, those deep, stormy eyes holding secrets she longed to reveal and understand. "What if they're too much to bear?" she asked, a shiver tracing down her spine as she tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "Nothing worth having ever comes easy," he murmured, closing the distance once more until their lips grazed in a hesitant whisper, an intoxicating brush of warmth and longing. As they lingered in that breathless moment, the outside world faded, the laughter dulled, and all that remained was the potent gravity between them. "I think what I want is worth the risk," Nova finally breathed, desire shimmering in her gaze. "Then let's embrace it," Kaden replied, closing the gap as their lips met, igniting a fierce connection that shook the ground beneath them. A kiss that held weight, passion, and secrets like an unbreakable bond. But just then, the uproar from the crowd surged again, threatening to intrude upon their sanctuary. They drew apart, breaths mingling, hearts thudding in synchrony, a moment suspended in time. "What now?" Nova asked, looking into his eyes, searching for solace, yet finding only the fleeting reflection of turmoil. "Now," Kaden replied, his voice firm yet gentle, "we face the truth together." Scene 77, Nova's courage. The air in the grand ballroom shimmered, heavily perfumed with the scents of sandalwood and jasmine, thick enough to make the world blink under its weight. Nova Leclair stood back against one of the tall columns, her heart racing in staccato bursts. Laughter and delicate clinking of glasses filled the air, but none of it reached her. All she could hear was the thunderous pulse of her own fears, swirling like a tempest within. She had assumed her sister's identity in pursuit of a truth that was almost as dangerous as it was thrilling. Kaden Onyx moved through the crowd with a quiet intensity, his eyes scanning the room, but often drifting toward her, electrifying their connection from across the opulent space. The fiery glint of her emerald dress caught his attention, reminiscent of the wild courage that had ignited between them. As he faced down the criminal syndicate lurking behind the facade of elegance, she could sense his inner turmoil, his struggle to keep the past from swallowing them whole. "Nova, I." Caden's voice trailed off as he approached, still glancing over his shoulder, the tension radiating from him like heat off a flame. He was a protector at heart, the way he stood with his shoulders squared, and in his eyes she saw the weight he carried, his hidden son, a secret child tangled up in the web of their lives. "Stop," she said, shaking her head, glancing at the world's sparkle around them. "You can't push me away this time. I won't let you." Determination climbed into her voice, giving it an edge sharper than the crystal chandeliers hanging overhead. Just then, a sudden uproar erupted from across the ballroom. A group of men, faces obscured by suits but dark intentions clear, stormed in. The warm atmosphere broke like glass. Glasses tumbled, laughter turned to gasps, and in seconds the tightly knit fabric of the evening unraveled. Caden's instincts kicked in. He reached for Nova, pulling her toward him instinctively, shielding her as both blaring alarm bells and chaos erupted around them. "Get back!" he yelled, but she wouldn't let fear dictate her next move. "No, Kaden," she shouted, pulling her arm free, feeling the raw charge of uncertainty curve her spine. This was her moment to stand openly with him, not just as his dubious disguise. "What do you mean? Get back! We're not hiding anymore." The scuffle intensified as Kaden turned back to face her, the strength of his gaze mirroring the stirring emotions colliding within her. "We need to get out of here now." His voice was raw, but she could see beyond it. The vulnerability, the fear for both of them. The world spun in full motion around them, but they stood on a precipice, a pact between their hearts. Suddenly, a punch was thrown. A loud crack echoed, followed by the chaos of bodies scrambling. With instinct rather than thought, Nova grabbed Kaden's wrist, pulling him into the fray rather than away from it. The dance of deception had become an unexpected brawl, and she felt adrenaline sing along her veins like a wild orchestra. "Together," Nova declared, her eyes challenging him. "We face this together." With that, they moved in unison, dodging an errant elbow and ducking under the flailing arms of the would-be assailants. And in those split seconds, as their bodies brushed together amid the chaos, she realized how quickly everything could change. The vivid beauty around them transformed into a barren battlefield. As they maneuvered, Kaden found a pocket of air to breathe, the noise dulling slightly. "Nova, it's too dangerous," he insisted again, desperation creeping into his tone. But she pressed closer, feeling the surge within her, her courage erupting like fireworks in the night sky. "No, Kaden. This is me standing tall. I love you, despite your past, despite your secrets. We can brave this storm together." Her words hung in the air, defining the ground of their communion. Tension spiked as their eyes locked, and in that moment, surrounded by peril, it became a cocoon of vulnerability. He hesitated, vulnerability mingling with admiration and unspoken understanding passed between them, fortified in the battle, raw and real. The world blurred around them, the chaos fell away, and they were left suspended in a moment that belonged solely to one another. Kaden's features softened as he leaned closer, his breath warm against her skin. "You really are something else," he breathed. The world shrank to just the two of them, the chaos and the confusion fading like the colors of dusk. Their lips brushed softly, a silent vow amid the storm brewing around them. It lingered, charged, until the moment shattered and swirled the chaos back in. She had stepped into the light of courage, and in the embrace of that kiss, they were both transformed. Scene 78, Chasing Freedom. The first rays of dawn spilled across the horizon as Kaden Onyx leaned against the sun-warmed hood of his car, heart racing like a wild stallion. After the chaos of the gala, his life felt both exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. The air, crisp and laced with the scent of fresh earth and dew-soaked grass, lifted his spirits. His fingers absent-mindedly traced the line of a faded scar on his palm, a reminder of battles fought and secrets buried. From behind a nearby willow, Nova Leclair stepped into view, her vibrant dress swirling around her like a dance of autumn leaves. Kaden's breath caught at the sight of her, each step she took imbued with purpose. "Why are you standing there like a statue?" She teased lightly, her dark curls bouncing with every step, but Kaden's smile faltered. Beneath her playful facade, he sensed a current of anxiety, her energy crackling like a live wire. It's a lot to process," he said, rubbing the scar again, the sun glinting off his watch. "The syndicate is gone, but what about us?" Her brows knitted together and Kaden's heart sank. "I mean, it's not just about that. There's still so much we don't know about each other. Nobody knows everything about anybody." Nova shot back, her voice carrying the weight of her own hidden truths. A flicker of jealousy passed through Kaden as he recalled the lies wrapped around their shared past. "Who were you really dancing with when I thought you were?" "Stop," she interrupted, her voice cutting through the dawn like a blade. "You know it's more complicated than that, Kaden. I didn't want to hide. I thought I was protecting you." Kaden's eyes narrowed, the shadows of vulnerability creeping in. "Protecting me or protecting yourself?" The air thickened between them, tension woven tighter than a braiding storm. Just then, a light breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and the world around them felt impossibly still. They were left standing in an emotional stalemate, the depth of their connection clashing with the undeclared distance growing in every shared silence. "Sometimes I think, what if your secret is bigger than you let on?" Nova challenged, punctuating each word. "What if I could never accept you?" She hesitated, her chest rising sharply, and in that moment, her vulnerability broke free like a dam. "You're running from something, Kaden. You can talk to me." Kaden's walls trembled as her honesty struck him deeply. He glanced away, shame etching deep lines on his face. "I don't want to burden you. I didn't choose this. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the winding path they had traveled just the night before. Startled, they turned, and there stood an old acquaintance, Caleb, leaning nonchalantly against the fence. A smirk curled on his lips, a disarming presence that disrupted the tension hanging thick in the air. Is this the part where I break up an emotional moment? Because if so, I didn't mean to spoil your fun. Caleb drawled, lifting a brow. Caleb, Kaden replied tersely, his irritation evident. This isn't the time. Ah, but is it ever the right time with you two? Caleb shot back, his light tone a sharp contrast to the mounting tension. I thought you were ready to leap into freedom, not into a fight. Nova rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress a smile as she leaned into Caden's side, a small act of defiance against uncertainty. We are, aren't we, Kaden? Caden looked down at her, their bodies brushing, the electric connection a reminder that every argument and every secret held a path to reconciliation. We will be, he said softly, indecision mingling with hope. Caleb chuckled, unabashed as he stepped closer. Great then. Let's get to running. You know freedom won't chase itself, right? They all moved forward together, the weight of the past still clinging yet beginning to lift. Caden glanced at Nova, fierce intensity brewing within him. You know, I'm done letting shadows dictate my life. I want to chase after you, after happiness. Then let's run, Nova said, her voice firm yet buoyant, and together they stepped into the golden light of a new beginning, leaving the lingering shadows behind them. Scene 79. The weight of choices. The evening light filtered through the tall, curtained windows of the lavish library, casting a warm golden hue that danced across the polished mahogany floors. Kaden Onyx stood at the massive fireplace, the flickering flames reflecting in his dark eyes. He was methodically stacking kindling, his fingers brushing against each piece of wood, as if they held with them the weight of unspoken confessions. Do you think it's supposed to rain tonight? Nova Leclair asked, her voice breaking the silence as she entered, a playful smirk masking the tumult within her. She clutched a fragile teacup, steam rising between them like the unspoken tension. Could be, Caden replied, his tone flat as he focused on his task. Each small stick laid down a barricade against what loomed unsaid. Does it matter? A slight laugh escaped her lips, light yet threaded with something profound. It matters if we're stuck inside with only each other for company. I'd hate for you to run out of firewood. As the teasing rolled off her tongue, Caden turned, meeting her gaze. She wore a light indigo dress, its fabric floating around her like the waves of an ocean, capturing the dusk and holding it close. But beneath the surface lay treacherous currents. What's the matter with you? He asked, leaning against the mantel, arms crossed defensively. Aside from teasing me? Instead of responding directly, Nova took a slow step closer, the scent of lavender trailing her. I thought after everything, she began, faltering slightly before pressing on, after what happened last night, we could talk. You know, like how friends do. The word friends hung between them like a dark cloud. He pushed himself away from the mantel, the heat of the fire competing with the fire in her gaze. Are we just friends now? He held her eye, the tone implying depth that spurred her heart. She swallowed hard, emotions teetering on the edge of honesty. It wasn't just that. I hadn't expected to see your side of the world. It's wild, Caden. I didn't think you'd honor your family's shadows so deeply. Honoring shadows? He raised an eyebrow, the hint of amusement breaking through the tension. That's a rather poetic way to say, I don't trust you. Her laugh died quickly, replaced by something raw, a tremor of vulnerability. I'm not saying I don't trust you, Caden. I'm saying I don't understand you. An intense silence engulfed them as they measured each other's resolve. The shadows in his eyes flickered, displaying a flicker of chaos beneath the surface. And can I take that to mean you're worried about me? He challenged, stepping forward, causing her heartbeat to rush. Maybe I am, Nova confessed, her breath catching slightly. This place, everything going on with your family, isn't safe, Caden. I need to know you're not walking a fine line between passion and danger. Caden's expression hardened, the flickers of firelight casting deep shadows on his face. And what if I am? What will you do then? Emboldened, Nova pressed on. I'll be there to pull you back, even if you don't want it. Her urgency felt like the crackle of a fire catching. She wanted to save him from the inevitable blaze of his secrets. Or perhaps you'll end up burned, Kaden said, a hint of challenge in his voice. He stepped closer, their bodies nearly touching, creating an electric tension that neither could ignore. What makes you think you'll be any different than the others? Because I care, she whispered, a softness filling the air between them. The weight of her words lingered, hanging like the very air charged with unsaid confessions. His resolve cracked slightly as he reached out, brushing his fingers against her cheek, the touch warm and grounding. And what if I told you I'm scared? Scared of losing you in the flames of this world I'm entangled in. Their eyes locked, an unspoken promise forming amid the chaotic undertones of their lives. The soft flicker of the candles in the room danced in rhythm with their deepening connection. Then let me in, Nova murmured, every inch of her conveying a desire for unity amid chaos. I want to understand who you are and help make a way through this mess. The tension that had been a taut string began to unravel, each moment suspended as if time had slowed. Kaden moved closer until their foreheads nearly touched, his breath mingling with hers, warm and inviting, yet dangerously uncertain. You don't know what you're asking for, he rasped, a plea hidden within the challenge. I know what I need to do for both of us, Nova whispered back, her voice trembling slightly, but steady. You're not alone in this, Kaden. No longer a threat, the flame between them glowed softly, igniting a path toward unexpected vulnerability. They had entered unknown territory together, both willing to reach for a deeper bond, forged in trust and brimming with potential. The world outside was heavy with uncertainty, but within those walls their connection simmered, tender and electrifying, waiting to unfold into something more profound. Scene 80, a family reunited. The golden light of the setting sun spilled into the small living room, illuminating the dust particles swirling in the air like tiny stars. Kaden Onyx stood near the window, his typically confident posture slumped slightly as he stared out. The weight of his past hung heavy upon him, splitting his focus between the present and the shadows of his thoughts. Next to him, Nova Leclair fidgeted lightly, her gaze dancing nervously from Kaden's broad shoulders to the family photos lining the wall. Each frame displayed a perfect moment, a proud smile concealing the intricacies of lives lived beneath the surface. Kaden turned away from the window, his deep brown eyes softening as they landed on her. Are you ready? He asked gently, his voice a low rumble that stirred something deep within her. The air felt thick with anticipation, and she nodded, swallowing hard. As Kaden led her toward the small bedroom at the end of the hall, the walls whispered stories of a life they had only just begun to glimpse. He opened the door, revealing a scene of innocence, bright toys scattered across the floor, colorful drawings plastered on the walls. In the corner, a young boy, no more than 5, played with an array of action figures, completely absorbed in his own world. Ezra, Kaden called softly, capturing the boy's attention. Ezra looked up, his big round eyes sparkling with the innocence and wonder of childhood. A slight frown creased his small forehead as he glanced between Kaden and the stranger beside him. Who's that? He asked, tilting his head cursorily, a hint of suspicion dancing in his tone. Kaden's friend, Nova answered before Kaden could respond, the words bursting from her as she knelt down to his level. I'm Nova. It's lovely to meet you. She extended her hand, a warm smile lighting her face, though her heart raced inside her chest. Ezra regarded her hand with the seriousness of a little philosopher, mulling over the offer. Finally, he took it, his grip firm. You're pretty, he said matter-of-factly, tugging a strand of her hair. The innocent compliment turned the tension in the room into laughter. Looks like I'm in good company then, Nova replied, her laughter a charming melody that seemed to dissolve Kaden's anxious energy. She felt a sudden flood of warmth from the boy's honesty, and Kaden's fortitude swelled with pride. Ezra likes pretty things, Kaden added, ruffling his son's curls lightly. Which means you're now expected to join the elite club. His voice lightened, infused with a hint of his usual charm. But even amidst the levity, a shadow danced behind Kaden's eyes, recalling the secrets that had long been buried. He realized he had never shared with his son the story of the woman who stood beside him, the complexity woven into their present moment laden with unsaid words. I like superheroes, Ezra declared, his eyes lighting up as he grabbed a small caped figure from the floor and motioned toward them. Do you want to see my collection? Absolutely, Nova exclaimed, sitting cross-legged on the floor as she leaned in, curiosity brightening her features. The boy's enthusiasm was infectious, diluting the remnants of tension. Kaden watched them, a mixture of relief and longing in his expression. I used to think my dad was a superhero too, she said gently, her gaze flickering to Kaden, who seemed absorbed in the moment, yet kept a world of complexity swirling within him. What about you, Kaden? Do you have superpowers? Ezra nodded vigorously, eyes wide with excitement. He's super strong, Kaden chuckled softly, running a hand through his hair. You could say I've got some skills, he replied, his voice fading as he watched Nova smile with unfettered delight, a light within her drawing him into her orbit. Like what? Ezra asked, his interest unabated as he clutched his action figures tight. Like the ability to protect the ones I love, Kaden replied, the weight of his admission filling the room with an unspoken intensity. Nova held her breath, understanding that these words, laden with emotional gravity, were a bridge to something deeper. Interrupting her thoughts, Kaden suddenly knelt beside her, the shift in his energy palpable. And I'd like you to be part of our family, Nova. Staring into his eyes, she felt the world around them fade into stillness. A rush of connection surged between them, binding their secrets and dreams with hope and uncharted paths. It was a moment that promised not just acceptance, but something infinitely more profound, a promise of whoever they could become together. I'd love that, she whispered, the weight of possibility glimmering in the air, and they both knew life would never be the same again. Scene 81. The aftermath. A heavy rain pattered against the grand windows of the luxurious penthouse, drenching the sprawling city in a sheen of silver. Inside, the air was thick with unspoken tension. Kaden Onyx leaned against the cool marble counter in the sleek kitchen, arms crossed tightly over his chest as if holding himself together. He stared out at the chaotic downpour, lost in thought. Do you really think this is over? Nova Leclair's voice sliced through the silence, laced with an edge that hinted at the raw emotions bubbling beneath. She paced the polished floor, her heels clicking sharply against the tiles, echoing like a ticking clock in the charged atmosphere. Kaden turned to her, brow furrowing. What do you mean? We can't just pretend that we emerged from all this unscathed, she replied, her hands gesticulating passionately. I donned my sister's identity and quite literally played with fire. You have a son, Kaden, and I. Don't, he interrupted, clenching his fists. The tension snapped between them like a taut wire ready to break. You don't understand the stakes. Then help me understand. Nova's voice quivered, betraying the strength she'd feigned. She stepped closer, the scent of rain mingling with her floral perfume, the sweet notes of jasmine tinged with a trace of summer sun, an aroma that wrapped around him like an embrace. I assumed her identity because I believed I could protect everyone, and instead, I threw us all into this chaos. Kaden's chest tightened, the weight of his secret pressing heavily against his ribs. He could feel the storm outside swell, the thunder rumbling like an angry beast, mirroring his heart's turmoil. You think I wanted to lie about him? You think I've kept him a secret for fun? It's not about the past, it's about keeping my family safe. Then let me in, she pleaded, eyes ablaze with fervor. I want to fight with you, Kaden, not against you. He hesitated, his mind swirling with images of his child-tender moments filled with laughter and warmth he dared not share. He had shielded the boy from a world of danger, unaware that the greatest threat lay dormant in his own silence. This isn't just about us, he said, voice dropping to a whisper. It's about him, about protecting your sister, too. She's in the middle of this mess, Nova. You can't possibly understand. I understand more than you think, she exclaimed, her cheeks flushing with defiance. We're caught in a web of lies and deceit. If we want to break free, we must face the truth together. You keep pushing me away, but I won't go. Kaden stepped closer, their proximity igniting a palpable tension. Every heartbeat echoed. The weight of their shared experience filled the chasm that separation had forged. What good is the truth if it brings nothing but destruction? He asked quietly, vulnerability creeping into his voice. Destruction is already here, she shot back, tears glistening in her eyes. The soft glow of the kitchen lights reflected her determination. But we have the power to choose how we respond to it. You might be afraid of your past, Kaden, but I refuse to live in fear of our future. He searched her gaze, and what he saw there, steadfast love, fierce resolve, took his breath away. You don't know what you're asking, Kaden replied, his voice a low rumble, fear mingling with admiration. Show me, she whispered, inches apart now, breath warm between them. The fragrance of rain lingered, earthy and invigorating, rising in the air around them. Show me the truth, show me our truth. The silence that followed hung heavy and electric, the space between them pulsating with unspoken possibilities. Kaden hesitated, heart pounding against the cage of his ribs. In that moment, drenched in the aroma of rain and resolve, he felt as if everything hung in the balance. I can't just put everything out on the table, he murmured, the intensity of their connection pressing against him like a wave. Then let's start with one truth at a time. Nova's voice, soft but insistent, broke through the barrier he'd erected. What if we face this together? A look of determination crossed Kaden's face. A spark flickered within him, igniting a flame of hope he had long believed extinguished. Outside, the rain continued to fall, relentless yet vital, as he took her hands in his, grounding them both in the storm's chaos. Yes, together, he finally agreed, breathing a sigh forged from relief and trepidation. But no more secrets. Agreed, Nova said, her eyes radiant as she squeezed his hands tightly, their gazes locked. No more running. Scene 82. Strength and vulnerability. The late afternoon sun streamed through the large bay windows of Kaden's elegant loft, casting warm golden light across a room filled with the subtle scent of blossoming magnolias from a bouquet on the coffee table. Kaden stood at the kitchen island, hands resting on the cool marble, while Nova rummaged through the fridge. It was a mundane task, preparing a light dinner together, but the atmosphere crackled with something deeper, unvoiced and palpable. Should we do a salad? Nova asked, her brows knitting as she surveyed the haphazard contents of the fridge. She pulled out a stray cucumber, rolling it between her fingers as if contemplating its potential. Salad sounds good, Kaden replied, though his eyes were trained not on the fridge but on her. He admired the way a strand of hair had escaped her ponytail, falling softly across her cheek. It was moments like this that felt suspended in time, inviting connection despite the unspeakable tension that hung between them. Nova tossed the cucumber onto the countertop with a half-hearted thud, her expression shifting to one of defeat. It's like we don't have anything edible in here. What do you even eat? I tend to stick to the essentials, he quipped, a hint of laughter in his voice. The corners of his mouth turned upwards, but the smile faded as he sensed the heaviness in her eyes. I just wanted to be normal, to not feel different all the time. Nova's soft confession penetrated the kitchen's domesticity, and silence fell between them like an unexpected guest. The weight of her words lingered in the air, each syllable carefully balanced on a knife's edge. You are normal, Nova. You're the most real person I know, Kaden replied, his voice dropping to a whisper, the air suddenly electric. He stepped closer, the space between them shrinking. It's others who don't see it. Yet he too was a fortress of secrets, and the walls he'd built around himself were tall and daunting. Nova's gaze flickered downward, a silent acknowledgement of the knot tightening within him. Sometimes, she began, hesitating as uncertainty washed over her face. Sometimes I just wish I could start over, like be someone else for a day. What would you do? He prompted, his curiosity piqued despite the tremor in his heart. I'd dance, on a stage where no one knows my name, free of expectation. The wistfulness in her tone pulled at his heart, and he instinctively reached out, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. I can't promise you that kind of freedom, but I can promise you a few dancing lessons, Kaden said, the corners of his mouth twitching with a teasing smile. I'll take you up on that, she replied, her lips curling into a smile that lit up her eyes. But the smile faltered slightly as she added, as long as you keep your feet out of my way. Kaden laughed, the tension dissipating for a brief second, but he couldn't ignore the tangled emotions churning within him. I'll do my best. Just don't ask me for a tango. I might lead us into a wall. They shared a laugh, the warmth shining brightly against the shadows of unspoken fears. Still, the air was thick with vulnerability, and Kaden sensed that humor could only carry them so far. He took a step closer, their bodies barely a breath apart. Nova. The way her name hung in the air felt like a careful invitation, a moment suspended between what they had been and what they could become. Pauses filled the silence, each heartbeat echoing louder than words. As they stood there, inches apart and teetering on the precipice of something profound, Kaden felt an urge to bridge that final gap between them. "I've never told anyone this," he said, vulnerability creeping into his tone. "I'm scared, scared of all the secrets I've kept, scared of what happens if they all come crashing down." Her gaze softened, comprehension shining through her uncertainty. "If it makes you feel any better, I'm terrified too. I have my own secrets." In that moment, vulnerability transformed the mundane kitchen into sacred ground, a sanctuary where their fears could mingle freely. He reached for her hand, clasping it in his, the warmth enveloping them in a fragile cocoon. Emboldened by her touch, Kaden leaned closer, inhaling her scent, a mix of jasmine and exhilaration. "You know, vulnerability isn't weakness," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's strength." With a breath held, their lips met softly, a gentle exploration that carried the weight of their confessions, a shared promise in the silence. The kiss deepened, each heartbeat resonating like a drum, each second stretched into an eternity of tenderness. As the world outside faded into a distant murmur, the kiss transformed, becoming a dance of its own, a ballet of emotions where fear, hope, and love intertwined, blurring the lines between their intricate pasts and tentative future. They finally pulled apart, breathless, the air thick with unspoken words. "We'll figure this out together," Nova said, her voice a quiet pledge, eyes glimmering with unshed tears, reflecting the courage blooming between them. Kaden nodded, feeling the weight of their exchanged fears transformed into shared strength. "Together," he echoed, hope kindling in the depths of his heart. Scene 83, a path forward. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the elegant ballroom, Kaden leaned against the grand piano, fingers idly tracing the polished wood. His hazel eyes were locked onto Nova, who stood across the room, draped in a crimson gown that flowed like liquid silk against her figure. The air thrummed with unspoken tension, a charged silence lingering between them. "So, is this how we're going to pretend everything is fine?" Kaden said, finally breaking the stillness. The words were measured, laced with a mix of frustration and yearning. Nova turned to him, her brow furrowing. "What do you want me to say, Kaden? That I'm ready to dive into the abyss with you?" She gestured toward the cacophony of the gala, the laughter and clinking glasses, a stark contrast to the gravity of their conversation. He straightened, taking a step toward her, but the distance felt monumental. "This isn't just a dance, Nova. There are real stakes, real consequences. You can't ignore the shadows lurking in our lives." "Shadows?" Nova's voice rose. "You still think of me as just your sister's twin, grasping at your secrets? I'm standing here, in front of you, entirely myself, but I can't carry the weight of your past, too." A heavy silence followed, punctuated only by the distant strains of a waltz. Caden's jaw tightened, and for a moment, he looked away, as if searching for answers among the booming laughter and swirling dresses. "I never meant for you to feel that way," he said, his voice softer now. "But you have to understand, everything about us has been a tangled mess from the start." Nova took a breath, glancing down at the shimmering floor before meeting his gaze again. "And what about your son? The secret you keep locked away as if it's a weapon? Do you think I'm not strong enough to handle that?" "It's not just about strength," he replied, his voice dropping to a whisper, fear mingling with sincerity. "It's about how you'll see me, how the world will see you if they find out. This isn't just our little secret anymore, Nova. It's a ticking time bomb." Something flickered in her eyes, a mix of indignation and tenderness. "You think you're protecting me? You think you're protecting us?" She stepped closer, the fabric of her dress brushing against his arm. "You haven't even trusted me with your truth. What does that say about how you feel?" Kaden took another step forward, closing the distance but still holding back. "You don't want this burden. I can't put it on you." "What burden, Kaden?" Her voice cut like glass, sharp and clear. "The burden of love, of hope. I thought we were fighting for each other, for a life together, not just surviving in this maze of secrets." The atmosphere crackled, each word igniting the air between them. Kaden's resolve wavered, the sincerity in her voice anchoring his heart momentarily. What if I lose you because of this? You already lose me every time you push me away, every time you hide a part of yourself. Nova's eyes blazed with defiance, challenging him to see the truth. You need to choose, Kaden, the shadows or me. For a heartbeat, everything fell silent as Kaden absorbed her words. Silence lingered, holding them both captive, a bittersweet ache coursing through the space where unresolved feelings collided. As if responding to an invisible force, he reached for her hand, capturing the warmth of her palm with tremulous fingers. I don't want to hide anymore, he admitted, vulnerability threading through his tone. Not from you, not from anyone. Nova's expression softened, a flicker of hope igniting within her. Then let's step into the light together. We'll figure it out. Just trust me. Their eyes locked, conversation fading into a luscious silence filled with possibilities, their emotions interwoven. The weight of the world felt lighter as they stood on the precipice of change, the future unspooling before them. Together? He finally asked, the word a plea and a promise. Together, she echoed, leaning closer, the moment stretching as her breath mingled with his. As the last vestiges of daylight slipped away, their hearts beat an unsteady rhythm, two souls daring to face the storm ahead, united. Scene 84. Renewing Trust. The flickering shadows cast by the grand chandelier danced like memories around Kaden, Onyx, and Nova Leclair, providing an almost surreal intimacy amid the luxurious chaos of the gala. The clink of crystal glasses and muffled laughter barely reached them as they stood just outside the opulent ballroom, on a terrace overlooking the sprawling gardens. Kaden's breath hung in the cool evening air, his heart drumming an urgent rhythm that mirrored the tempest beneath his calm exterior. Nova leaned against the wrought iron railing, the moonlight glossing her features with an ethereal glow. She turned, her gaze penetrating the distance, searching Kaden's face for answers, for solace. The silence stretched between them, heavy, expectant. You know it's strange, Kaden finally said, his voice low and contemplative. This place feels like it holds so many secrets. He glanced down at the polished wood underfoot, willing the weight of unspoken truths to dissipate with each beat of his heart. Secrets can be beautiful too, Nova replied, her tone lightening the moment like a soft breeze. She straightened, moving closer, like how hidden gardens bloom when nobody's watching. There was a playfulness in her words, a slight curve of her lips that made Kaden's stomach flip. He looked up, meeting her gaze, a flicker of hope igniting between them. Is that your way of saying you want to run away and find our own hidden garden? Maybe, she said, her eyes sparkling mischievously. As long as we have ice cream. Kaden chuckled softly, the tension easing as he remembered their late-night escapades. Candy stores bathed in neon, sidewalks scribbled with laughter. They hadn't avoided the obstacles laid before them. They had dodged them together, creating a fortress of joy. The air shifted, thickened, and suddenly, the laughter from the gala felt like a distant party as the tension between them swelled again. Kaden looked away, the churning emotions from his past rising like an unbidden tide. You deserve to know everything, but stop. Nova reached out, her fingers brushing against his forearm, an electric connection grounding him. You don't have to bear the weight of the past alone. As the words hung in the air, Kaden's resolve softened. He stepped closer, the warmth of her presence enveloping him, causing the world to shrink down to this miraculous moment. I want to be there for you, Nova, but there are parts of me that are tangled in shadows. Then let's unravel them together. Her voice was steady, imbued with an understanding that both frightened and exhilarated him. I want you, Kaden, all of you. The sincerity in her declaration thawed the hesitance he had carried. He paused, absorbing the beauty of her offer, the weight of the truth holding them captive. My past. I have a son, he said finally, the admission slipping from his lips like a confession. Nova's breath caught, the surprise illuminating her features. A son, she echoed, steps back like a pendulum swinging to an unforeseen halt. You've kept this from me? It's complicated. Kaden swallowed hard, his throat tight. I've never told anyone. The fear of losing you, it made me hide. The silence stretched, frozen yet charged like the moments before a storm. Nova's eyes shimmered with emotions he couldn't decipher, revealing depths that both drew him in and terrified him. She stepped forward, a shadow moving boldly into the light. "Kaden," she whispered, "I'm not going anywhere. Not after everything we've faced." And with that, the night broke open. Their worlds collided in a rush of unguarded longing, a need that felt like gravity as Kaden closed the distance between them. He tucked a raven curl behind her ear, his fingertips trembling against her cheek, while the rest of the world faded into oblivion. "Together," he murmured, heart racing against the depth of her gaze. "We can face it all, your secrets, my past. Together, we can lift every weight." Nova nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. Together. As their lips met, a bond forged from trust and electric desire ignited between them. The gentle warmth of shared breaths, whispered promises for the future, biting away the chill of uncertainty. It was a moment both terrifying and beautiful, a fragile thread they wove together amidst the chaos around them. When they finally pulled back, they were breathless, their laughter filling the space that had been so fraught with tension. The connection between them sparkled with newfound resolve, revealing a world where love could exist even in the face of darkness.